Presentation on the disaster and human rights.
Disaster and human rights. Disaster, both natural and human made, pose significant challenges to the protection and fulfillment of human rights. This presentation explores the complex relationship between disaster and human rights, examining the impact of disaster on vulnerable population, the role of government and humanitarian organization in protecting rights, and the key challenges and the best practice in disaster response. What is a disaster? A disaster is a sudden event that causes widespread damage and disruption. It leads to the losses of life, property, and services. Natural disaster. This disaster like earthquake, flood, hurricanes, and tsunamis are of unpredictable and very destructive. Human made disaster. These disasters are caused by human actions such as accident, technological failure, or conflicts. Complex disaster. These disasters are caused by a combination of natural hazards, human action, and social vulnerability. They of have long-lasting impacts. Vulnerable population in disasters. Vulnerable populations such as children, older adults, people with disabilities, and marginalized communities are often disproportionately affected by disaster. Children, high risk of death, injury, and displacement. Older adults, high risk of injury and death that make them more vulnerable to the impact of disaster. People with disabilities physically can make them more to injure, and it's difficult to have routine and challenges receiving in necessary. Marginalized communities, limited access to resource, the impact of disaster and less available to recover. International human rights law and disaster response. International human rights law provides a framework for protecting and fulfilling the rights of individuals even in the context of disaster. International law states are obligated to protect, respect, and fulfill the human rights all individuals even during emergency. Key rights. This right must be protected and fulfilled for all individuals regardless of their background or circumstance. Challenges. However, international human rights law provide a framework to guide and hold government accountable for their actions. The impact of disaster on human rights. Disaster can have profound impact on human rights, leading to violation of fundamental rights such as the right to life, security, shelter, food, and access to healthcare. Number 1. Loss of life. Disaster of end result widespread casualty with vulnerable population particularly at risk. Number 2. Displacement and suppression. Millions of people are displaced by disaster, facing challenges such as homelessness, separation from families, and access to initial aid